Well, up to the show, what a belter we've got. Let's get going, because if you were watching PMQs earlier on today, then you might not have been able to hear Nigel Farage in the chamber. Let's take a listen back.
And that we demand, if you got a call, the country demands that you say to the French president, will you shut up? That you say to the French president, we will not accept undocumented males across the English Channel, and that you are not dictated to by an increasingly arrogant, anti-Brexit French president.
His proposal for 10 years, wagging the Tory dog, has been to break everything and claim that's how you fix things, to stick two fingers up at your neighbours and then expect them to work with us. And he votes against the Borders Bill, which gives more powers to our law enforcement to deal with security at our borders. And Mr. Speaker, the reason for that is he has no interest in fixing the problem because he wants to milk it and exploit it. That's the truth about him and his party.
Well, next, Lee Anderson from Reform UK stepped up, calling for a point of order after Nigel Farage was heckled by MPs.
Honourable Member for Clacton asked what I thought was quite a reasonable question, because I knew what the question was going to be, but during PMQs I couldn't hear a single word. I'm sure people in this chamber couldn't, because people like the Honourable Member for Dewsbury behind me never shut up all the way through. The Honourable Member for Clacton was trying to ask a reasonable question. We do not subscribe to this sort of dog whistle politics in Reform UK. So, Mr. Speaker, could you please give us advice on how to stop this behaviour in the future?
Well, there you go. Order, order, bang out of order. Let's discuss it now in the studio. I'm joined by GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's back from maternity. Lovely to see you. GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and a man who was sat next to Nigel Farage, so hopefully he can shed some light on what the question was. And as the deputy leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Welcome all to the show. Olivia, let's start with you. I've got to say, I listened to that on the radio live. I couldn't hear a single thing Nigel Farage was saying. I listened to it 4 or 5 times back on social media. I'm still none the wiser as to what the question was. My point to you is quite simple. Irrespective of anybody's political beliefs, in that chamber, there should be order when somebody speaks. Today, there was a total lack of order. And I put it to you, people are already saying that it seems that there's an establishment drive to try and keep Nigel Farage silent and heckled. And the Speaker, many felt, was sadly lacking in his ability to control the House. All three of my guests in the studio today, you were all there at PMQs. What did you make of it?
Well, I think we should say first, there is a lot of noise and jousting at PMQs. You do expect speakers to be interrupted when they're asking questions. The Prime Minister gets interrupted. Nigel Farage definitely takes more flack than other MPs. And I think what was particularly unusual about what happened today is you would normally see the Speaker intervene far, far earlier when there are that many interruptions. Lindsay Hoyle is actually well liked across the House. He's got a very, very different approach to his predecessor, John Bercow, and he normally doesn't take any nonsense from MPs, even during PMQs. It is normally possible for MPs to get their point across. Today, it was not possible. You said you listened to it 5 times. I was in the chamber. I could barely hear it at all. I think there may have been some sort of technical issue going on as well, because there seemed to be some kind of feedback from the mics. But again, why was this only affecting Nigel Farage? I can see why someone like Lee Anderson is feeling really, really annoyed about it. And from the outside, it might look like a sort of concerted campaign against Nigel Farage. It'll be really interesting to see if anyone from the Commons team, from the Speaker's team, has anything to say about this, or whether it will just be put down to one of those things, a noisy, rambunctious PMQs just before recess.
With the screaming feedback was Jeremy Corbyn, who was sat right behind him. Richard Tice, you were sat there next to Nigel Farage. First of all, what was the question?
So the question was that millions of people voted for Brexit. We want to take back control of our borders, but that Nigel was saying we don't want tens of thousands of undocumented illegal migrants crossing the Channel. And could he take that message to the increasingly arrogant French president? But it was hard to get the words out because it was complete chaos. You expect it from the opposition, but what came today was a concerted attempt from two sides behind Nigel's shoulder. I was right next to Nigel. I could barely hear what he was saying. And it was relentless from the member for Dewsbury. And so, that's why Lee Anderson said, can you please shut up? And it was pretty extraordinary. It's the place of other people to give comment about the Speaker. That's not for MPs. But I also do think there is a genuine concern from many people about what is happening to the microphones when Nigel gives a question, because they're supposed to be cut off for everybody else. And there is increasing evidence that may not have happened today. And we will look and see whether or not actually that's been happening in the past, because this is not the first time.
Now, in the Brussels and the Strasbourg chambers, of course, they used to cut Nigel's microphone off the moment he'd gone over his time limit, but he got a fair crack of the whip and there was no other microphones turned on. Are you saying that cacophony of noise from all the other microphones is all going into one sound output, and so you simply can't understand what's being said by the person asking the question?
We are looking at, there is genuine concern about what's going on with the microphones. It may be, because it was directly behind Nigel, that gentleman's voice was going straight into Nigel's microphone. So, let's wait and see. But it was pretty chaotic. I mean, as Olivia says, it's always noisy in the chamber at PMQs. But whenever Nigel asks a question, it seems to be particularly noisy.
Nigel Nelson, let's bring you in. You were also there today, and you said that you have a microphone in the press gallery, so you get the sound feed of what's going on.
We have a loudspeaker.
Yeah, and you couldn't...
No, I couldn't hear.
I
agree with Olivia and with Richard there. I think there is something wrong somewhere with the technology. Broadly, when there is a lot of shouting and screaming in the chamber, it's part of the tradition of PMQs. What we've all got is a loudspeaker behind us, where if you sit back, you should be able to hear the person who's speaking. In this case, I couldn't hear Nigel either. I could hear Iqbal Mohammed behind him. I couldn't work out how that could have happened because it meant he had to be on Nigel's microphone. So the whole thing was really weird. I am surprised the Speaker must have been in a similar position, that he didn't intervene earlier and sit down that member.
OK, well, let's come back to you. That doesn't really make things any clearer.
It doesn't, but the jury's out. I think there's more work to be done to find out what's going on with the microphones. But you talked about the establishment just earlier, Martin. It is significant that yesterday Nigel was the only leader not to be invited for a meeting with President Macron. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, he wasn't invited to the massive state banquet last night either. Really? We are polling way ahead of all of the other political parties. I think it was completely inappropriate.
Are you intimating what a lot of people are saying? And that is, there appears to be some kind of establishment lockdown, shutting out of Nigel Farage.
Well, what you can't shut out is the British people, the British voters, and that's why we're polling where we are, because I think people recognise that we should be heard, reform should be heard, and something is very wrong.
OK, well, let's go to our next topic now. I'm going to bring you back in, Olivia Utley. Of course, the question was about Emmanuel Macron, lest we forget, still the guest of honour. In fact, a short while ago, speaking with Sir Keir Starmer at Downing Street, an extraordinary set of affairs yesterday. It was Dear Keir, fawning over the Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer could barely contain the bromance in real time. We carried that live on the show today. Emmanuel Macron blaming Sir Keir Starmer for the small boats crisis, saying actually what a lot of people, including Nigel Farage, have been saying for a long time: until you clamp down on generous welfare payments, on hotels and jobs on the black market, the boats will continue to come. Macron blaming Sir Keir Starmer.
I know, it's a funny story, this, because it feels as though Emmanuel Macron is paradoxically a bit of a hero for Brexiteers over the last couple of days. He said that it is the UK government's fault that there are so many migrants crossing over in small boats. Obviously, we've reached a record this year of over 20,000 migrants coming over here in small boats. He says that there are too many pull factors to the UK. So you mentioned there the hotels, the ease with which illegal migrants to the UK can claim benefits if their asylum claim is accepted. Then you also have the state of the black market, the black jobs market in the UK, particularly the gig economy in the UK. While technically illegal migrants can't work in the UK, obviously many of them do. And actually Macron brought forward a really, really interesting statistic, which is that 1/3 of EU migrants entering the Schengen area, their ultimate goal is to get to the UK, which when you consider how big the EU Schengen area is, that is pretty astonishing. And he is now saying, Emmanuel Macron, that his payment for a one-in, one-out deal, which is what Keir Starmer is pushing for, would be for the UK to crack down on the routes, the easy routes for migrants to come here and get into the black market for jobs.
Let's get back to you, Richard Tice. Hold the front page. It's probably one of the first times you've ever agreed with Emmanuel Macron.
He's right. I mean, we're far too generous with these benefits. It's completely ridiculous. It's totally out of control. If you get a Deliveroo or Just Eat's delivery, there's probably a 40% chance it'll be by someone who is essentially here illegally, working illegally, and it's got to stop. But at the moment, there is no will from this government to do that whatsoever. But equally, President Macron is at fault because he won't do what he's legally obliged to do, which is to stop the boats like the Belgian authorities. They stop them leaving the Belgian shores. Under the 1982 UN Convention of the Law at Sea, France has a legal obligation to stop those boats from leaving the French shores. And they are in breach of that obligation, which is why we have the legal entitlement and the right to do their job for them. And that requires political leadership and courage that we're not seeing from the Labour Party and we didn't see from the Tories.
Nigel Nelson, the final word to you. This is meant to be the moment where Keir Starmer cemented this bespoke deal with his brother from over the channel.
Yeah.
And he may yet, but it's not the best of starts, where he's basically saying, it's your fault.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that some of the points made about the benefits, what asylum seekers get is under 50 quid a week if they're looking after themselves. That's hardly, not in a hotel. They'll get under a tenner a week if they're in a hotel. So and they're not benefits. There's an allowance. They get a card whereby they can draw essentials. But 10 quid for a week is hardly a huge amount.
Well, if you get your free food, your free heating, your free lodging, a lot of people
you can't leave them on the street. So the question is, what do you do about them if you don't use the hotels? As far as the pull factor goes, the biggest pull factor is the fact that an asylum seeker cannot claim asylum unless they're on British soil. So until we can change that system, going across the channel will remain the biggest draw.
So you think that anybody anywhere in the world should be allowed to have a pop and claim asylum?
No, I don't. I think
bear in mind about 85% get that granted.
No, I think that what you have to do is you have to change the system whereby they have to claim asylum here. There are other ways of doing it. The Tories tried the Illegal Migration Act. It didn't make crossing the channel legal because it's not illegal. What it did do is make the asylum seekers inadmissible. And that's the key thing. So if they're inadmissible, then they have to go somewhere else. You've then got to find a country prepared to accept 20,000 people traipsing across it to go to a place where they could actually claim asylum there.
But this one in, one out policy is absolutely ludicrous. All it's going to result in is a huge surge in fake historic relationships and family links that supposedly people have as they come across. It will just lead to more criminality, more people coming across the English Channel. It's absolute lunacy.
But they will have the difference will be is that this is for the people smugglers. What they will have if they come across will be a safe route. They won't have to rely on paying the people smugglers, so at least it'll put a dent in their business.
They'll still come across because you'll get people claiming that they've got a family link to the UK.
But they won't have to come across in a small boat.
All right, gents. Now, Mr. Tice, you're here today because something caught your eye, and that is net zero, we hear, could cost £800 billion over the next 20 years. And this is not according to a crackpot think tank. It's the OBR. What's going on?
Well, they've confirmed what I said 15 months ago was the net zero would cost £30 billion every single year. At the time, Desnes says, we don't recognise that figure in a sort of pompous way. And now the OBR has said, actually, Tice is right. Once again, our numbers are bang on the money on the cost of net zero, 30 billion quid, taxpayers' cash, absolute lunacy. If you scrap net zero, then all of a sudden, you can resolve Rachel Reeves's self-imposed massive black hole. It's easy when you know how, and when you've got a bit of political courage.
And the reason for this, like who didn't see this one coming down the road, pun intended, there's no more fuel duty coming in from diesel or petrol over the coming decades because of EV mandates. Nigel Nelson, this was guaranteed to be a problem. If you stop people driving cars with petrol or diesel, they're not paying any more fuel duty. This is a black hole caused by government policy. I put it to you, it's making the country poorer.
Well, it won't do once it's off the ground because you adjust taxes for that. You're absolutely right that obviously you won't get fuel duties in if people aren't using petrol and diesel, which is the whole point of going green. So
where's the money come from?
You adjust the taxes. You have to pay for your green fuel. I mean, if you're going to fill your car up with electricity, you will have taxes on that.
We've
and
already got the world's most expensive electricity. What, you make it more expensive?
That'll make it so much more. The cost of electricity will go nuts.
You're adjusting the taxes to the point where you replace the loss you've had from petrol and diesel.
Which will make travelling per mile even more expensive than it currently
will.
Cheaper.
Provided the electricity...
It won't, because the electricity price is the highest in the world, and the number of tax you need on that.
But provided we get everything off the ground, we get the wind farms and the solar farms in, it'll become cheaper.
Maybe we should have a windmill on top of our cars. That'll make them all go along. Gentlemen, we have to deal with that. Richard Tice, excellent. Nigel Nelson, excellent.